folks, it's Abby, and today I'm going to be going through the books that I managed to read in July and whether I managed to balance out my TBR with the books coming out and the books coming in. Usually, no. If you saw last month's video for June, I did real bad and I ended up having to find 6 books from my TBR to unhaul, which was definitely not fun, so I was really hoping that I wouldn't have to do that this month. So let's delve into the books that I read and the books that I got and see what I managed. The first book I'm mentioning is one that I read for this month, and that was Pompeii by Salvatore Neppo. This is just a guide to the archaeological site that was released in 1998, which was when it entered my family. So I kind of needed to get it read. I read this because I actually went to Pompeii at the end of June time, and so this was really interesting. Still fairly accurate despite, you know, it's been 25, that's how old I am. It's been about 23 years since this was published, so I enjoyed it. I don't think anyone of you are going to pick it up, but I had fun. Then I read Rivers of London by Ben Aaronovitch. This is the first book in the Peter Grant series. It follows a police constable in the Met who discovers that magic is real and ends up working for the Magic Investigation Department. Lots of kind of mythology woven into this, along with the police procedurals. 2 things that I do want to say that are technically negatives. One of them is that at least the main character's point of view is incredibly sexist. Whenever he's looking at the female characters, it's all about how they can be used as sexual objects. I don't know if that is supposed to be just the character's perspective and that's going to develop over the books, or whether that is just how Aaronovitch writes. The book was good enough, and the book was also written long enough ago, in 2011, that I do want to continue this and see. The other thing to mention is that Ben Aaronovitch is white, but the main character in here, Peter Grant, is mixed race with a black Sierra Leonean mother and a white British at least, father. So that is something to be aware of going in. I've tried to find Own Voices reviews from black and mixed race individuals, and for some reason none are coming up when I search. I'm very bad at googling. The character development, separate from the sexualisation of the women, was fantastic. The world building was brilliant, and I'm definitely going to continue on with this series because it's been stuck in my brain since I finished it. I can't stop thinking about it. Now for the first new book in, and no surprises, it is from Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe. She is the primary reason for my TBR being so big. And this one is My Name is Monster by Katie Hale. I know pretty much nothing. It's a monster that kind of emerges from the Arctic vault, which has kept her alive after what she believes is the end of the world and everyone else dying off. It sounded interesting, the cover was nice, and I couldn't resist. Then, I did not read all of this. I actually just read Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. It's just in this bind-up. It is the smallest book in the bind-up, which is mainly the reason I chose it. It was the Jane Austen July last month, so I wanted to at least read one book by her, seeing as there are still some that I've not read. Northanger Abbey is the one that she has that's kind of mocking the traits of standard Gothic literature. I really enjoyed it. I liked the tone and the way that she mocked the tropes within Gothic literature, and I also enjoyed the story itself. Jane Austen always surprises me because if it was anyone else writing these, I wouldn't enjoy them. I don't do contemporary romance, things like that, but Austen just does it so beautifully. I really love her writing. She's a classic author for a reason, so yes, very glad that I read Northanger Abbey. And thank you for Caitlin from Manchester Rabbit for giving me this edition. Then I read The Travelling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arakawa. This was gifted to me by my partner. He gave me 4 translated Japanese cat books last Christmas, and I've been making my way through them chronologically. This was the second most recently published, so I've got one left. This made me weep, like full on like crying. It's amazing. As always, with these kind of cat related Japanese translated fictions, it's heartbreaking. I wept. It's beautiful, obviously gave it 5 stars. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to ruin anything, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. People love this book for a reason. I highly recommend picking it up if it sounds interesting to you because it's just stunning. I love it. Then my book from the GSFF Goldsboro box came through, and that is The Final Strife by Sara El Arif. It is in this gorgeous slipcase with the gorgeous foiling. No sprayed edges, but slipcase, so I think we can let it off. I do not know much about this at all in the slightest. It's a high fantasy I think there's some lesbians, and that is about all I know. I don't care. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I trust Goldsborough. So I'm very excited to get to this in August. And speaking of Goldsborough, the next book that I finished was last month's book, which is Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro, and this was fantastic. This was amazing. So this is set in the, what year is it? It's like the late 1800s. 1882. And it goes between England, Scotland and the US. And these people, and Japan actually, it spends some time in Japan. And it's basically, there are these children primarily that they are looking for who have talents, magical talents. They can manipulate dust, they can heal from injuries. It's not the very traditional like, oh they can fly, oh they can do this. The healing from injuries is the most kind of traditional magic one, but I found it really, really interesting. And these children are being looked after by the Institute. That's the intent, and so they are brought home to Scotland from wherever they were from. So we collected some children from the US. We actually go back in time and look at a child being collected from Japan, and the ones from the US went through the base in London, which is why we're in England for a bit, and then up to the Institute, which is based in Scotland in the remote Highlands, because then they're away from people. I really enjoyed this. I loved the character development, I loved the plot progression. Every single small deviation and small back plot that was in this book is something that I would love to be explored in more depth. I want more of every single side plot that was mentioned in this. I want more from each and every character. I went and looked this up. It's going to be a trilogy. I'm incredibly excited. I just really, really enjoyed this. I think that the magic is done really well. It's not technically the primary focus. It is the primary focus, but it's not like just the magic. There is more to it. And I don't know how to describe it, it's just really good. So yeah, if you like historical fiction, or if you enjoyed things like Peculiar, this Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, then I really, really recommend this one, because it is just, this is like the adult version of that. It's fantastic. Again, I trust Goldsborough. Then I finished Book of Night by Holly Black. This was actually the Illumicrate book for July, so I should have read it in July. I didn't, because I went on holiday instead, but I didn't, June. I didn't read it in June because I went on holiday instead, and I didn't want to read July's book because of the controversy around it. I just decided to not go with that one, so I was like, okay, cool, I'll read this instead. I went into it expecting to despise it and DNF it. I almost did a few times. It's gonna get 3 stars. I am not the biggest fan of Holly Black's writing style. I tried to start The Cruel Prince and DNF'd it pretty quickly, but it's an okay book. The concept of this is that there is a young woman who used to be involved in a life of crime, and she's trying to straighten herself out in order to keep her sister safe, who she lives with, and she ends up being drawn back into this life of crime. I did enjoy the magical background of this and how that was used. The tagline on the back says, even your shadow can be stolen. It can be kind of quickened with your blood, and it can then have free movement around you and can then be detached. And so people like steal these shadows, they use them to manipulate things and commit crimes. And so I did like that side of things, but the main character herself, I also didn't like the writing style. So the main character was one of those dislikable characters, and for me to like a book with a dislikable character, they either need to have something that I consider a redeeming factor, or the book needs to be written brilliantly. The book was not written brilliantly, and she did not have what I consider to be a redeeming factor, so this was fine. It's going to be 2 or 3 stars. I'm not sure. I will not read any more Holly Black. I will not read any more of the books in this series, but at least I've tried one of her adult books, so at least, you know, I have an opinion. And then for a book added to the TBR, actually the last book that I added to my TBR this month, and that is The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd-Jones. This is the Illumicrate book for the month, which is really pretty with the sprayed edges. This is Fae mythology based in Wales. Now, I'm really usually not about fae and fairies, but if you mix it in with various different Celtic, I guess, indigenous British cultures, I really enjoy it then. So if it had been set, you know, like in the Highlands of Scotland, or like using old Scottish history, or in Ireland, or in Wales, I can get with that. So I'm hoping that I will still enjoy this despite the fae. We shall see. It is very pretty, the writing is quite big, so I should fly through this. We'll see. And then the final book that I finished. It's another one where I didn't read the entirety of the collection. This one is a very battered version of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the entire Lord of the Rings, which was bought in the 70s for £2.10, and then my partner, when he went to school, took it to school and it died in his school bag. Regardless, there's this very battered edition. I actually listened to it by audiobook. I didn't read this copy, I'll hold it this way. I didn't read this copy, but I listened to it by audiobook, which I really enjoyed, and that is The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm so glad I'm finally reading this series. I finally finished the first part of Lord of the Rings. Took long enough. So, for those of you who are counting, that is it. I've mentioned all the books. I read 7 books. 5 of those books were on my TBR. The reason it's only 5 is because the Jane Austen collection is on my TBR as a whole, so that won't get marked off until I've read all of the stories in there, so I've got 3 more books to read by her. And then The Lord of the Rings isn't actually on my physical TBR at all. I was just borrowing that copy as the stand-in to hold it up. I'm doing it by audiobook, so that doesn't count either, but the other 5 books come off of my TBR, so that takes it from 114 down to 109. And then I brought in 3 more books, which brings it back up to 112. So I got my TBR down by 2. Not the most impressive, but it's down. I'll take the win. I'm really happy that I actually managed to get it down, especially with this being another smaller reading month. I only read 2,334 pages this month, which I know for some people would still be a lot, but in comparison I was reading 5,000 pages kind of in the January to May region, so it's dropped off from what I was reading. Again, like, this is not that many books. 7 is a great number of books, it's quite a few, but it's low compared to what I have been reading in earlier months. So for having a smaller reading month for me, I am really happy that I managed to get this to go downwards for once. So, let me know down in the comments below what books you read this month and your favourite book that you read. I cannot pick between The Travelling Cat Chronicles and Ordinary Monsters. I love them both for different reasons. Ordinary Monsters didn't make me cry, but like, I was invested in this world. It's a 600-page book. Like, I was so deeply invested, but then obviously Travelling Cat, I weeped. So they're just going to take equal first spot this time. If you'd like to see some more from me and see whether in August I managed to balance the books or whether I managed to fuck everything up like I usually do, then please do hit the subscribe button down below to see some more from me in the future. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I shall see you next time. Bye!